is suffrage? According to Merriam-Webster, vote given deciding a converted question or electing a person for office or trust. That's what suffrage is. This is going to be a speech about women's suffrage of the 1920s. Women's suffrage had been going on for quite some time before that, but in the 1920s there was a big break in women's suffrage. As many would know, the 19th Amendment was passed, giving women the right to vote. About 144 years previously, Susan B. Anthony was arrested for fighting for her right to vote. 48 years later, women got the right to vote. Now every woman in the United States over 18 can vote. And I'm going to talk about reasons why I think the women's suffrage movement was influential. According to Dobson, it was 100 years ago that radical suffragists began picketing the White House daily, went to jail, and engaged in hunger strikes to bring attention to the women's suffrage and press for federal constitutional amendment to win voting rights for all women. So essentially, women were starting to get very angry and upset that they were not equal to men, understandably so. And so they began to riot and practice their rights for peaceful protesting. So then the 19th Amendment became law on August 26th of 1920. And as you know, 1920 was an election year, so this was just a couple months prior to when the presidential election would be occurring. After many years of protesting, they could now vote. And women rejoiced with this news that they would be able to vote in the upcoming presidential election. They finally felt like they were going to be able to be heard, like their voices mattered. However, there were still many obstacles for women for participating in voting in this upcoming election. Women's turnout varied from a high 57% in Kentucky to a low 6% in Virginia. The gap in the turnout between the sexes ranged between 28% in Missouri to 40% in Kentucky and Connecticut. So in that election in general, there wasn't a lot of women that did turn out for that. This is because it was hard for them to get registered to vote in such a short amount of time. But that election in particular actually had a very low turnout in general, even including men. Another issue is that minorities didn't have the right to vote. So this is your people of color. Many things have changed for women, however, in the last 100 years. According to Brownsworth, Title V was a game changer. Ultimately, this law impacted many women and girls as it guaranteed the right to vote, their choices, and to create more an equal environment throughout schooling, whether it be elementary, middle, high school, or even the college level. So now women can take any classes that they like. Previously, classes were more geared towards women or more geared towards men for things like cooking classes and such. But now they could take anything that they wanted. And now schools would also lose funding if they did not protect women or prevent women from any kind of sexual assault cases or sexual harassment crimes. Women still face a lot of issues, although we have come quite a long way. Women and men are not paid the same to do the same job, which is a big issue that's been fought for in more recent times. But we have gained a lot more opportunities. We can vote, we can do any job that we want, and we can pretty much do anything. So according to Rutland, the Women's March held on January 21st and 2017 broke records and ignited modern-day protest movements, advocating for legislation and policies to protect women's rights. There was almost 500,000 protesters in Washington, D.C., and this caused many other marches to happen in different other countries as well, because it's not just the United States where women are more suppressed, it is actually the entire world. So it kind of sparked that movement for everybody. And due to these marches, women in other countries have gained the rights that they were looking for. So we can squash these issues for women in our younger generations. This movement can impact everybody, and not just women and girls, but it just makes everybody equal. And we have come a long way, but there's still a lot of suffrage and things that need to change in many countries besides the United States. So that's why I think that the women's suffrage movement was very